The Viper V3 Pro SE was pretty silently released in early 2026, and I haven't seen too many people talking about it yet. A few weeks ago, it was on the discount for $80, so I wanted to buy it because I want to compare it to the RAWM Leviathan V4, as their shape, weight, price range, and other specs are rather similar. Just a quick heads up, as far as I know, the Viper V3 Pro SE is just a Viper V3 Pro, but without an 8K dongle out of the box, and no grip tapes included. Now, let's get into the comparison. Firstly, the build quality. Both are exceptional, absolutely no creaking and flexing whatsoever, and even when I try to squeeze them with both of my hands, there's still no creaking sound coming from them at all, so I think this is a tie. Secondly, the main clicks. The clicks on the Leviathan V4 are pretty decent, with little pre-travel and barely any post-travel, unless you're pressing towards the end of the clicks. However, I feel like the clicks shells are a little bit thin, which makes them susceptible to bending. While this is not a big problem, sometimes I can feel there's a tiny bit of grinding when I put a lot of pressure on my left click. The side-to-side wobble is not too bad at all, but there is still a little bit. Compared to the Viper V3 SE, there is no side-to-side wobble, like there is none. The clicks feel light and spammable. I have no grinding problems at all, and no popping as well, unlike my deathader V3 hyperspeed. They also have a little bit of pre-travel and a little bit of post-travel. Personally, while I don't hate the main clicks on the RAWM at all, I much prefer the Razer ones, so that's a win for the Viper SE. Thirdly, the scroll wheel. This one is an easy one. The scroll wheel on the Viper SE are usable, but they don't feel nice at all, at least on my copy. I don't know how to describe it, but each step feels off and somewhat sluggish. They're also only using a mechanical encoder, unlike the Leviathan V4, which is using an optical encoder, which is more durable in long term. The steps are also light and crisp, and it's probably the best scroll wheel I've ever tried. So that's a win for the Leviathan. Fourthly, the side buttons. Both are perfectly fine in my opinion, with little pre-travel and just a little bit of post-travel. However, the Razer ones are a little bit more spammable and crisper, so I think this is a minor win for the Viper. Fifthly, the coating. Again, both are perfectly fine. They are both nice and grippy, and I think it comes down to preference and color choice, because on different colorways, the coating will be different. So I can't really compare these two together. I personally prefer the Razer ones because it's more grippy. Still, I think this is a tie. Next steps are the skates. The stock skates on the Viper are pretty good. They're smooth and are properly routed. They're not as fast as my dot skate Jade Air, but they're not bad at all, and I can happily use them. The skates on the Leviathan, on the other hand, are probably the best stock skates I've ever tried. I no longer have them, unfortunately, because I still much prefer dot skates to full-size ones. Still, the stock skates were really smooth and fast. Despite being full-size, they were almost as fast as my Jade Air, which is kinda insane. So this is a win for the Leviathan. About battery life, this is probably a tie because I have small problems on both. The battery of the Leviathan is a little bit inconsistent, while the battery on the Viper takes an insanely long time to fully charge. The Leviathan actually took heavy inspiration from the Viper V3 Pro shape, so they are really similar. There are small differences though. The hump on the Leviathan is a little bit more towards the back, and the sides on the Viper are a bit flatter in my opinion. On the hand, I feel like the Viper is just a little bit thinner and easier to maneuver as I use fingertip grip. Still, without comparing them side by side, I don't think I would be able to notice the differences, so this is a tie. About the software, we all know by now that Synapse is probably one of the worst mouse software out there, but recently Razer has been adding a lot of cool features in it. The software for the Leviathan is mostly fine and is also web-based, which is nice, but there are some settings that are confusing and unnecessary in my opinion. I would say this is a tie, but not in a good way, because compared to the software from ATK, for example, these two still have a lot to work on. About the weight, they are both around 50 to 56 grams with full-size skates, and about 54 grams with dot skates. So that's a tie again. Sensor-wise, both use top-of-the-line sensors, with the Leviathan using the PAL 3950 and the Viper using the Razer Focus Pro Gen 2, but out of the box, the Viper only has 1K, while the Leviathan has dual 8K. I personally only use 1K, but I think this is still a win for the Leviathan. Quality control, mostly they are perfectly fine, but I still have several really small problems. With the Viper, is the scroll wheel again that I mentioned earlier. I think this is related to the QC, because on my deathader V3 hyperspeed, the scroll wheel is exceptional. With the Leviathan, the problem I had is a bit insignificant and weird. So because it would take a bit of time to explain, you can check my Leviathan V4 review to see what the problem is. But TLDR, I can hear a faint static high-pitched noise when I point the mouse towards my ears. I personally find the issue on the Leviathan much more annoying than the problems on the Viper. So I think that's a really minor win for the Viper. Last but definitely not least, the price. The price can vary drastically depends on your country. I'll use how much I paid for these as reference. I pay around $52 for the Leviathan V4 and about $78 for the Viper V3 Pro SE. So that's a massive win for the Leviathan. In conclusion, here's the final version of the table. I hope this little comparison can help you decide which one is more suitable for you. Personally, I much prefer the Viper to the Leviathan, but for the price I paid, the RAWM Leviathan is a much better deal. So if you're on a tight budget, but you still want something that is really good, get the Leviathan V4. But if you have a little bit more to spare, I think you should consider the Viper V3 Pro SE as well, because this is probably the best deal Razer have ever released, even better than the deathader V3 hyperspeed. Speaking of which, I've also made a few reviews of other mice in the same price bracket, like the Cyrox V8, ATK F1 V2, or this one, the deathader V3 hyperspeed. Anywho, thank you for watching.